Hi everyone, welcome back to my lab and today's video, which is going to be a review and wear test of the brand new Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation. The last foundation I reviewed on my channel was the Pat McGrath foundation, and I had a very good experience with that. So I decided to try a new foundation with the Anastasia one. I was very excited about that because it was marketed as a luminous foundation, and that's my preferred finish. Before we get into the review and my wear test, if you're new here, I'm Yori. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and consider subscribing to my channel. I upload 3 times a week. Now let's go ahead. We'll start with the try-on portion. I'll do some check-ins and come back with my final thoughts at the end. Welcome to another foundation review. Anybody else getting foundation fatigue? There are so many new releases of foundations. It's a little bit overwhelming. But today we're trying out the new Anastasia foundation. I wanted you to get a good look at what we're working with. My skin concerns are a little bit of dryness. I do have very dark under eye circles, as you can see, under eye creasing. I have very deep marionette lines and furrows on my forehead. As far as discoloration, I have a little bit of hyperpigmentation here. I don't really have acne prone skin, but I do have a small breakout there. So we'll see the coverage when I apply the foundation. Typically, I do the heaviest coverage on my cheeks here where you can see the uneven skin tone. And then I keep it lighter everywhere else. I don't struggle with very, very heavy pores, but I do have a few here, so I'll be able to tell you if I think you need to focus on a pore minimizing primer. I have applied my eyebrows. As you can see, I have my morning skincare, which I applied a couple of hours ago. I have the Becca Anti-Fatigue Under Eye Primer and the Ciate Hydrating Primer, that is the Watermelon Burst one. I have been loving this so much. It was in my favorites video for July. Really impressed with it because it has that sticky base, allows my foundation to really adhere to it without me having to use too much product. So let's go ahead and get into the foundation. This foundation has a lot of claims, so we're definitely going to see how it does with those claims. Reading from the Sephora website, it's supposed to be a water-resistant liquid foundation that creates a luminous natural finish and is long-wearing even without setting powder. However, they did release a setting powder with the collection, and I did pick that up as well. This foundation is paraben and mineral oil free. It's vegan, cruelty-free, and gluten-free. Available in 50 shades, which is amazing. And I did take a look at the shade range. They have a lot of different undertones, which I think is really, really important for foundations. I picked mine up from Ulta Beauty. This is what your bottle looks like. A lot of people were making fun of the foundation side here, which I have to admit, it does look a little bit tacky in comparison to their typical font. I would say that they could have left it with that. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's foundation, but I mean, it's fine. It doesn't necessarily bother me. The beauty news girls were saying that people needed to take a nap over this because they were really going off on that. It's not my favorite. Other than that, the bottle looks beautiful. It's a glass bottle. It's not frosted, which I think it'll help when picking out your shade because those frosted glass bottles can really change the appearance of a foundation. You do have a very nice pump. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a shake. I bought mine from Ulta Beauty. It launched there first, but it will be available on Sephora. Typically, I use 1.5 to 2 pumps of foundation at the most. I prefer a light to medium coverage. Okay, I'm pumping quite a bit. There's 1 kind of fluke pump. And 2. So I would say that's about 1.5 pumps because the first pump was not a full pump. It is pretty thick consistency. As you can see, it's not really dripping down my watch glass. Hopefully the shade will match me. I did use Sephora's trusty shade matcher to help me pick out a shade. It looks a little bit dark, but I have been getting some color this summer, so we'll see how it goes. I typically like to apply my foundations with a brush. This is one by Tarte from a holiday set from a number of years ago, but I do have my Dampen Beauty sponge in the event the brush doesn't work out well. I've picked up a little bit on my brush and I'm going to dot it around my face. Similar to how I reviewed the Pat McGrath foundation, I like to spread it out as much as I can so that I'll use the thinnest layer possible. I did pick up the shade 240N. The N is supposed to represent a neutral undertone. Even though I have a slight olive undertone, I have found that when I'm purchasing foundations online, I will typically err on the side of selecting a neutral undertone rather than an olive, because sometimes the olive or even the golden can be a little bit yellow on me. Alright, so the foundation is blending out really well. With this first layer, I would have to call it light coverage. I don't see it as medium coverage. It's fairly easy to blend. The first ingredient is water, and so it's a water-based foundation, and I did use a water-based primer with it. I think the shade match is going to do me just fine. So taking a closer look at the foundation, it is a very natural finish foundation for sure. My skin looks like skin again. I can still see my pores, the few that I have, so if you're used to using a pore minimizing primer, you probably will still want to do that. So here you have one layer of foundation on this side of my face. I had enough to go like a little bit over to the other side, so here you have the other side. I would say for the most part it has evened out my skin tone. It doesn't feel too heavy. It adhered pretty well to my nose, which typically foundation doesn't stick there. So let's go ahead and do the other side. Here's how we're doing in terms of the amount of product I used. I've used pretty much all the amount that I picked up. So again, I'm gonna dab it all over. And I have a tendency to focus more in the center, and then I work it outward. I'm putting it over that blemish so we can see kind of how it would cover. It's covering okay. Again, I would call this light coverage, but I'm applying a very light layer. Really, I have no business buying so many foundations because I use so little foundation that they last me a long time. But I've been so curious about this ABH foundation. They haven't released one since they did their foundation stick, which honestly, it didn't do very well. And the people that I saw review it, they were saying that it was very drying, and having dry skin, I ran the other way. I'm just going to pick up what I have left, and I'm going to intensify the coverage on my cheeks. From this application experience, I would say I would typically use 2 pumps of this foundation because 1.5 wasn't enough. So here we are so far with one very light layer. You can still see my beauty marks and things like that through the foundation, but I like that it looks like skin. You know, this having luminous in the name, I would have expected it to be more dewy. I don't feel that it is that dewy. It looks like a natural or maybe satin finish at best to me, but I like my foundations glowy. Before we get into the powder, I'm going to apply my concealer. I'm going to go with the Cover FX Power Play Concealer. I have some new concealers to try, but there's not a concealer with this launch, and I figured I'd pick a concealer that I know very, very well. I was worried at first because this one has a matte finish, but this foundation is not that luminous that I think it would look unnatural. So I'm going to apply my concealer, a little bit of cream contour, and we will be back to test the powder. All right, we are back and looking a little more awake, so it's time to try out the powder. I had no trouble blending out my concealer over the foundation or the contour. I applied the concealer just underneath my eyes. I didn't bring it up anywhere because if there's any creasing, I want to make sure that it's just the foundation, even though I know that this concealer is amazing. It doesn't crease. It looks great even though I haven't even set it. And I just applied a little bit of contour here and here. So that's what we're working with. I'm reading about the powder. I don't see it on the Sephora website yet, so I'm reading from Ulta Beauty. It says perfect, brighten and set makeup in place with the loose setting powder. It's lightweight, super fine, goes on smoothly as it absorbs oil, minimizes shine, and leaves you with a flawless matte finish. It's available in 4 natural tone shades and 1 universal translucent shade. The powder retails for $36 and the foundation is $38 if I didn't say so before. So I picked up my powder in the shade Banana, which there's translucent, then light, and then banana. I was tempted to get the light, but it looks really light and a little bit pink. Plus, I ordered the Everything kit, which I have to tell you about that. From the Pat McGrath website, I have the Huda powder that are all in very light tones. Same for the Jeffree Star powder. So I decided to go for the banana since I am more tan, and hopefully this is going to work out for me. So with the powder, this is what the packaging looks like. Very, very nice. The logo in the front. On the bottom, it says loose setting powder, banana. You do receive 25 grams of product, which is a really nice amount. Packaging is really big. The lid is domed, which I wish it was flat so I can stack my powders because, you know, makeup hoarder problems. But here's what the inside packaging looks like. There is a sticker there. and a sifter. The holes on the sifter are rather wide, so you're gonna be getting a lot of powder out of here. I'm just gonna put the lid on and flip it upside down just a tad because like I said, those holes are really wide. Oh, okay, it wasn't too much that came out. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm gonna give my eyes a touch up so that I don't set any creasing. I'm gonna use my Huda brush to set underneath my eyes. And I'm just lightly tapping. Okay, the powder does have a slight yellow tone, but I think it's gonna work out really well because, again, I have warmer tones to my skin, and I was really afraid that the light one was going to be too pink. Definitely mattifying from what I can see, and it's also very smoothing. So what I was saying about the Pat McGrath is that I ordered the everything kit from her website on launch day, which was now 2 weeks ago really, and it hasn't even shipped yet. All I got was an email saying that they were experiencing delays in shipping, and they sent me like a 15% off coupon for next purchase, but I still haven't gotten a shipping notice. Like, I've never experienced that from the Pat McGrath website, and I've purchased a lot of her kits during launch times, and I've always received it like within 2 or 3 days at the most. So I really don't understand what is going on. I've seen a lot of people complaining about this, so mine is not an isolated incident. Ooh, this powder is finally milled for sure. I just inhaled a little bit of it. All right, so my under eyes are set. I am liking the color. I'm liking the color of the foundation as well. Now, as far as how my foundation is feeling, honestly, it's a little bit tacky, but nothing like the Pat McGrath foundation. In my opinion, the Pat McGrath foundation was really, really tacky. I'm gonna take a very fluffy brush. This one is by It Cosmetics, and I'm gonna pick up pretty much what's left on the lid, and I'm just going to pat that all around my face. That immediately reduces the tackiness. So the powder is mattifying. It does reduce the tackiness. I don't think it's adding a significant amount of coverage. It's not really changing the color of the foundation. Underneath my eyes, it did have a brightening effect. I'm gonna go ahead and brush that away. I typically don't bake. I'm just brushing that away. The natural finish that I had before is now gone. This looks more velvety, or I mean natural finish at best, but a little bit more on the dry side. I don't think that this powder would take the place of any of my favorite powders like the Huda powder or Glossier's Wowder. I like the color that I chose. I like the way it's set in my under eye. It feels very, very smooth. Where I applied a lot of powder, it feels super smooth. I don't know. I'm gonna apply the rest of my makeup. I'm waiting for my Natasha Denona Coral palette. I'm hoping that it comes today so that I can film with it to have a video for tomorrow. Today's Wednesday, the day I'm filming this, and I think I'm gonna put the Natasha Denona palette first and then this one on Sunday, so that way I have time to try out the foundation again. I don't like to just post a video on a first impression, especially for foundation. I think it takes a couple of tries to see how it's gonna be. I literally just got a message that my palette has been delivered, so I am excited. I decided to prime my eyes and set my eyelids with that powder as well. I like the way that it's looking for a more mattified finish, which is not my personal preference. The powder I think did lighten the foundation a little bit now that I'm looking at it a little bit more closely, but I'm gonna bronze up and take care of all of that. So take a good look at what we're working with. And I'll be back to do my first check-in with a lot more makeup. All right, so it's been about an hour. I'm gonna run, get my palette, get something to eat and things like that, so my next check-in won't be for quite some time. So I wanted to show you what the foundation looks like after I've applied the rest of my Complexion products. I have to admit that the Complexion was so mattified that I started doing things to offset that matte finish. So for example, I used an Hourglass bronzer, which they're very luminous bronzers. I also used the Anastasia Dewy Setting Mist, which they do recommend to use with the product, and the powders melded together really well. So even though I had a powdery look when I finished applying all the products, once I applied the dewy set, I think that they melded and the natural finish returned. It's still a little more satin at best in terms of the finish. The coverage is good. products layered well over it. I like the way that my complexion is looking so far. But yeah, I'll keep wearing it and check back again. All right, this is the 7-hour check-in. My goodness, I've been wearing the foundation for quite a while, and if you watched my Natasha Denona video, you know that my eye was just giving me the most trouble. So please don't judge the foundation on how it looks in this specific area. Most of that was concealer anyway, but this is how we're looking at hour 7. I think the foundation looks really good. I think the color match was great for me. It's just not my preferred finish. It's comfortable. My skin feels completely comfortable. It's non-sticky. My skin looks like skin. It's supposed to have no flashback, so let's go ahead and take a picture. Alright, so looking at the picture, I have to say that it's not really flashback that I'm seeing, it's just over-powdering underneath my eyes, especially this one because I had to redo my eye makeup so many times. So I would have to say that overall, the foundation is true to its claim, especially if you look at my forehead in the photograph. So this is how we're looking. I'm going to go outside and show you what the foundation looks like in natural daylight as well, and then I will come back and give you my final thoughts at the end of the day. Alright guys, you know I like you to see my foundation in natural daylight. This is what it's looking like. The sun is shining right at me. Please don't judge what's going on over here. But this is how the foundation looks. It's more windy than when I was doing the Pat McGrath foundation check-in. This is the foundation around the 7-hour mark. You know, I don't have settling in my lines actually, which is pretty impressive, especially with how frustrated I've been today actually. So yeah. Alright, so we're down to the nitty-gritty. It's been about 9 hours and I have to head out to dance rehearsal soon. So I'm gonna need to wash off my face. I don't like to wear makeup to practice. It gets really hot in there. But here's where we are. You know, the foundation looks good. I honestly have no complaints. I can't really say that it creased much. It's gotten into my smile lines a little bit, but I think it's worn very well. It was true to its claim of not having any flashback, which is great. I wouldn't call it luminous though, and luminous is part of the title. To me, it's not luminous. To me, it's a natural finish. Yeah, it got a little bit more luminous on my forehead and in areas that were not as heavily powdered, so I think it's one of those foundations that looks better throughout the day. Better meaning more dewy. If you have oily skin, probably you're not gonna like that, but then you might really enjoy the powder because it's definitely mattifying. I could see it in the photograph I took. I'm gonna bring you really close so that you can take a really good look, and then I'll be back with my final thoughts. So here we are, really up close and personal. Hopefully you can see that the foundation has settled right here just a little bit. My foundation always goes there. This one is just a tiny little bit. Please don't judge that eyeshadow. On my forehead it looks great. Other products layered really well over it. Look at me having tried to fix the mistake like 20,000 times. Please ignore that. That is not the foundation. But I want you to see it really close. I mean, there's nothing on my nose. No crinkling here. Honestly, I can't complain about anything but the finish. I think it's just slightly mislabeled. That's just me. Alright, so I wore the foundation for a good 9 hours almost. Yeah, 9 hours, and the foundation wore beautifully. I really have no complaints as to how the foundation wore. My only complaint, which I expressed throughout my try-on portion, is that the foundation was marketed as luminous, and I find it a little bit more on the satin to natural finish side. As I wore it throughout the day, the foundation did become a little bit more luminous. However, anywhere that I had applied the powder remained absolutely mattified. So let's go through some pros for the foundation. I think that the shade range is excellent. I love that they gave attention to detail with regard to undertones. That's really important. And 50 Shades, you know, that's right up there with Fenty, MAC, Makeup Forever, that always release many foundation shades. Estee Lauder as well. They are brands that have always been very inclusive. So that's really great to see from Anastasia. The packaging is lovely aside from the foundation thing on the back. I don't know, it's just, it's just a little weird. I mean, it says foundation right there. I don't think you would confuse this for anything else, but whatever. Other than that, it's a beautiful glass bottle. You do receive 1 full fluid ounce, which is the standard for the foundation. The price is also pretty good at $39 for a high-end foundation. I think the foundation applied beautifully with my brush over my sticky primer. I like that I only had to do a sheer layer. However, you are going to have to use a little bit more of this foundation than the Pat McGrath one to achieve a heavier coverage, which is interesting because the Pat McGrath was marketed as a sheer coverage and this one was more medium coverage. So that's kind of interesting, but you are going to be using a little bit more product in this foundation. So even though it's less expensive, you're going to go through it a little bit faster, if that makes any sense. I was really excited to try out an Anastasia foundation. I never tried out their foundation stick because people were saying that it was very, very dry, and with my dry skin, that's just a no-go. So I'm really glad that they are doing a foundation like this. Now, I think that the fact that the finish is really not luminous, it's not dewy, it's more satin, is good in the sense that it will be applicable to a wider range of skin types. So even if you have oily skin, especially when paired with the powder, that might be a foundation that you would really enjoy. It's lightweight, comfortable, it doesn't overly set into my lines, as you could see in the very up close and personal shot, so that's good as well. In terms of the negatives, I really can't say anything other than the fact that it's just named incorrectly. I just don't think that this is luminous. I thought that the Pat McGrath foundation was a lot more dewy on application, and even on application before powdering, this wasn't what I would call luminous. It does even out the skin tone. It applies really well on the skin. It doesn't contain any harsh ingredients, which is really good. This one doesn't have any alcohol, which was one of the concerns that people were expressing for the Pat McGrath foundation, so that's definitely a good thing. Yeah, I guess my only negative is just that it's not named appropriately based on my experience. If you do prefer a luminous or more dewy look, you can opt to not set it, but then it did have that sticky feel, which I don't really enjoy in my makeup. I don't like to feel sticky at all. I'm gonna try it again tomorrow, and I'll pair it with powders that are a little bit more luminous, like my Born This Way powder or my Glossier Wowder, just to see how it looks, because like I mentioned in the demo, I found myself looking for more dewy or luminous products to apply on top of it to sort of regain that finish that I prefer. Overall, I have to say the foundation is fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I think it's pretty good. I would say out of 5 flasks, I'd give it like a 4 flask. Now let's go ahead and talk about the powder. The powder, you really get a generous amount of powder. I love that it comes in 5 different shades because powders are not one size fits all. You have your typical translucent, and then you have varying depth of skin tone types of shades. I'm glad that I picked up the banana because it's a very pale banana. It's not super bright, and the other one looked a little bit pink, so I'm glad to have added a banana powder to my collection. You do get 25 grams, which is a very generous amount of product. For comparison, Charlotte Tilbury's Magic Powder has 13 grams. Jeffree Star's, what is this called? His version of the powder has 10 grams, and the Huda Beauty powder, which I love, has 20 grams. So you're really getting a very generous amount with the 25 grams of powder. I love the shade range. I like the packaging except for the domed top. I kind of like to stack my powders on my shelf like this, and when the powders have that dome, you can't really do that because they'll slide around. If you enjoy baking, I think that you're going to really like that sifter being so large. The powder comes out without any trouble. So if you like to really cake that powder on, you're gonna really enjoy it. But if you travel with it, it's likely to get messy because the holes are really quite large. When I was trying the powder on, I was a little put off by the fact that it was matte, but I've regained an appreciation for this powder given how much trouble I had with my eyeshadow. Again, just my leaky eyes, nothing having to do with the eyeshadow, but I had to remove my eye makeup and reapply concealer and reapply powder on this side, and this powder, it went beautifully. The powders layered over my base that I already had this on really well. This powder impressed me. It's not getting the best reviews, and I understand if you're a dry skin type, mattifying powder is not really what you would like, but in terms of it being blurring, it is. It's blurring underneath my eyes. It feels really soft. If I got any fallout, I was able to brush it away. It's a nice powder actually. I wouldn't say that it's my favorite, but I'm happy I picked it up in the banana because it differentiates it from the other powders in my collection, and it does have a little bit of a brightening effect. I like the powder. It's good. Other than that, what else can I tell you? I think that the products were really nice. If you're interested in checking them out, grab a sample. They're going to be in Sephora on August 15th, and they are already at Ulta Beauty. So check them out if you're interested. I shared my experience. If you have any questions, leave those in the comment section for me. You know, I'm always happy to answer them as best as I can. But other than that, this is it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you again very, very soon on my next video. Bye-bye.